Okay, hello Cloud Gurus and welcome to this lecture. In this lecture, we're going to learn all about the AWS command line. Now, the command line is really powerful. It enables you to interact with the AWS platform anywhere in the world. So you can interact directly with the platform using your laptop using the command line. So you can go in and provision things like EC2 instances or S3 buckets, etc. And it's a way of doing it without using the AWS console. So let's go ahead and go over to the AWS console. Okay, so here I am in the AWS console. I need to go over to services and we're going to go over to identity access management. Now you probably already have a user and group set up, but just in case you don't, I don't actually have it in this account, so I'll show you what to do. So we're going to go over to our users. I'm going to add a user. I'm going to call this user my EC2 user. And then I'm going to give them programmatic access. So we're not going to give them console access. It's programmatic access only. So we're going to use this for the AWS CLI. Next, we're going to add our permissions. So I'm going to go and create a group. I'm going to call this my admins group, something like that, admins group. And then I'm going to give them administrator access. So I'm going to apply this policy to the group. And of course, my user will inherit that permissions from the group. Next, I'm going to go ahead and just keep hitting next, and then I'm going to go ahead and hit create user. So that now gives me my access key ID and secret access key. So I want you to go ahead and download this. And once you've done that, go ahead and close it. Now, remember, you'll only ever be able to get that once. If you do lose the access key ID and secret access key, you can actually go into your user and then just go over to security credentials. And in here, you can make it inactive. You can create a new one there. So that's how you do it if you do lose the access key ID and secret access key. Now that I've got that, I'm just going to go back over to EC2, and I still have that EC2 instance that's bottlenecking at 100% CPU utilization. I'm just going to go in and delete that instance, and we'll just provision a new instance quickly. Now, annoyingly, I'm actually having an issue right now in Northern Virginia where the command line is not working for EC2. It is a regional thing. It does work in other regions, so I'm just going to switch over to another region. It should work fine for you when you watch it. But it's also a good demonstration to show you that the command line is completely global. You can use it anywhere in the world. So I'm going to switch over to the London region, and I'm going to go in and provision a new EC2 instance in here. So I'm going to go ahead and launch my instance, Amazon Linux 2 AMI. Let's use the default values of T2 Micro, default values here, add our storage, add our tags. I'm just going to give this a name. So I'm going to call it my CLI EC2. And then I'm going to go in and configure my security groups. I'm going to create a new security group because this is a new region, which I've never used before. So WebDMZ. I'm just going to leave port 22 open to the world. And then I'm going to go ahead and launch. And because I've never used this region before, I need to create an existing key pair. So I'm just going to change this up here to create a new key pair. And I'm going to call this key pair London key. I'm going to go ahead and download that, and then I'm going to go ahead and launch the instance. So that is now launching. We should be able to see it in here. I've already got the public IP address. I'm just going to go over to my command line. So I'm in the command line. I'm just going to move that key pair over to my SSH directory. I'm going to go into my SSH directory, and I'm going to chmod my key pair. So it's I'm going to change the permissions to 400 to lock it down. And then I'm going to SSH in. So SSH, EC2, then -user, and then then my public IP address, then -i, and then the key pair, which is londonkey.pem. I'm going to hit yes. And there we go. I am now in my EC2 instance. I'm going to elevate my privileges to root. And then what I'm going to do is go ahead and clear the screen. Okay, so to use the AWS command line, all we ever need to type is AWS, and then the service that we want. So we could type S3 and then ls. So this is basically just saying, hey, tell me what S3 buckets I've got. Now it says unable to locate credentials. You can configure credentials by running AWS configure. So why don't we do that? We'll run AWS configure, and now it's asking for our access key ID and secret access key. So I want you to copy and paste those in. So here's my access key ID, here's my secret access key. My default region, you could do type in US East and then -1, and then your default output, just hit enter. Okay, so what will happen now if we run AWS S3 and then ls? And there you go. You can see my 3 buckets. So I'm now able to access S3. I'm able to list all my buckets. I could type AWS S3 and then make bucket and then S3, and we could just do test bucket. Of course, that name's going to be taken, so I'll probably get an error message. But there you go, an error occurred, bucket already exists. But let's go ahead and try that again. So do AWS S3 and then make bucket and then S3. And then we'll just do a whole bunch of random letters and random numbers. And sorry, this should be S3 //. And there we go, it's made my bucket. So if I now type AWS S3 and then ls, I should be able to see my new bucket, and there it is there. So you can use the command line to start provisioning resources within AWS. You can provision EC2 instances. You can pretty much do almost anything in AWS using the command line. So I'm going to clear the screen and we're going to go over to our home directory. And if you type it in an ls in here, you can't see anything, but there is a hidden directory. If you go to the cd.aws, that's a hidden directory. And in here, it basically contains your config and your credentials. And if you want to have a look at your credentials, you can go ahead and you can see that the access key ID and secret access key are saved in the credentials file in the home directory in the .aws. Now, for this reason, it can be a bit of a security risk, because if someone goes in and hacks this EC2 instance, all they've got to do is go over to the home directory and go into your AWS hidden directory and just open up this credentials file. And then they've got your access key ID and secret access key. And they can use this access key ID and secret access key to access the AWS platform on other EC2 instances or on their laptop or on their PC. They can use it to access your AWS account anywhere in the world. And for that reason, Amazon always say, do not store your credentials, do not hard code them, do not put them on GitHub, for example. And it's much safer to use a thing called roles. And we're going to cover that off in the next lab. So what have we learned? So we've learned that you can interact with AWS from anywhere in the world just by using the command line, and you'll need to set up access in identity access management. So we set up our user, we put our user into a group, and then we applied administrator access policies to that group, which of course the user inherits. And the commands themselves are not in the exams, but some basic commands will be useful to know for real life. So just like what we learned, AWS S3 ls or AWS S3 MB, make bucket, and then the bucket name, things like that. And there's lots and lots of documentation on the command line. So go ahead and have a look at it when you get some free time. So in the next lecture, we're going to look at how we can use roles to access the AWS environment in a much more secure fashion. So if you've got the time, please join me in the next lecture. Thank you.